Excuse me, Mr. Safdie, let me touch on some of the points that you made. It's either, by what you said, it's either the international actors are not doing the enough effort to facilitate the aid and entering the aid, or there's someone blocking it, or a party blocking it, which you might not be willing to name.
Well, you can imply whatever you wish.
I'm not implying, sir. I'm stressing on the points that you have mentioned.
You asked me for facts. No one is blocking assistance coming in. It is a complex matter involving multiple parties, agencies, international as well as regional, all to work together to make of this a success. That's been my focus. That's been our collective focus as the United States. The President, the White House and NSC, Secretary Blinken, have all been dedicated to trying to get as much aid in as urgently as possible to meet the needs of the people of Gaza as best we can. It has not been enough. We've said that. But we're working to do more and ever more to meet those needs.
Okay, last question on that matter. I couldn't help myself but noticing the number that you have mentioned. You spoke about $100 million in assistance, which is not yet secured, to say the least. When anyone listens to the amount of this assistance that is targeted towards helping the Gazans and the Palestinians in Gaza, and at the same time, when they hear the number that the U.S. President and the Congress has signed off, which is an assistance of $14 billion to Israel, I mean, one would suggest this inequality in assistance.
You can't compare the two. The 100 million is part of a global campaign of 1.2 billion is a significant amount.
Even 1.2 billion is still very minimal compared to the other number.
The other number is the defense needed by Israel to end the threat posed by the butchers operating out of Gaza, who terrified the people of Israel, massacred the greatest number of Jewish citizens since the Holocaust, then fled back into their tunnels. They have stated that they will do this again and again and again. They must be stopped. The United States will do all in its power to provide support for Israel in ensuring this does not happen again.
Okay, since you have mentioned power, Mr. Satterfield, in a previous statement you said, and specifically talking about the briefing that you gave to journalists a couple of weeks ago, you said, we have made clear that we believe Israel has the responsibility to its own people to end the threat posed by Hamas. We are standing strongly with Israel as it works to achieve that goal. But we've been equally clear from the White House, from the Department, campaign, from every individual who speaks for the U.S. government, that how the campaign is conducted matters, and it must be conducted in a way that minimizes to the maximum extent possible civilian casualties. My question, Mr. Satterfield, is that despite this clarity, more than 13,000 civilians have been killed. A third of them are children, and 100 UN workers have been killed. The UN Secretary General described Gaza as a graveyard for children, and 2/3 of hospitals in the Strip are now out of service. It's the power that has been provided by the US that caused all of this, is it not?
It is the brutal massacre committed by a terrorist gang against Israelis that began this conflict. And it is a threat that the world should not accept.
I understand this point, Mr. Satterfield, but are you suggesting that Hamas, which you had just described with your own words, is responsible for the death of 13,000 civilians and a third of them are children? And are you holding them accountable or accusing them that they killed the 100 workers?
I'll make 2 points. First, yes, Hamas, which for the past 17 years has built its own network in, around, and under civilians, for whose welfare it cares not a bit, as shields. They have brought on to themselves and to the civilians they claim to be responsible for the suffering that is now apparent in Gaza. But Israel has a responsibility as well. It is a responsibility to conduct this campaign, which we wish to see, must see succeed, in a manner which minimizes civilian casualties to the maximum extent possible. The deaths have been too great. Too many civilians have suffered. And everything needs to be done that is possible to minimize those casualties and threats to civilian infrastructure. But let us not forget, Hamas calculated over the past decade plus on exactly these kinds of images being generated in the hopes that they would stop any meaningful campaign to end their ability to dictate to the people of Gaza what their future must be and to threaten the people of Israel.
Excuse me, sir, are you suggesting that the images coming out from Gaza are manufactured or are not right?
No, I'm not suggesting that in the least, but that Hamas knew these kinds of images would generate international pressure for Israel to halt its campaign. It is their use of civilians as shields that has been an integral part of their policy for many, many years. It has to stop. It doesn't justify any unnecessary deaths, but it is very much part of Hamas's strategy. They do not care for the welfare of the people of Gaza. They care for their ideological and for their political ambitions. And I'll make a comment here, if I may.
Please do.
It's not one country in the greater Middle East. There is not one state which attended the Riyadh Extraordinary Arab League and OIC summit, not one, that would not, if its own citizens were subject to this type of terrorist attack that Israel was on October 7th, would not respond in any way within their power to eradicate that threat once and for all.
Even if the price for eradicating this threat was thousands and thousands of civilians and children? Is this a price worth eliminating this threat, Mr. Satterfield?
Not one state would allow its citizens to be subject to a repeat of this kind of massacre. A repeat which Hamas, I have to remind, has publicly declared it will do again and again and again unless stopped. It has to be done, but it has to be done in a manner which preserves innocent life to the maximum extent possible